Hey friends, Rob Phoenix, Hexameister here. Hope you're all doing well. Folk magic is different than your everyday go to church Christianity. I've said this hundreds of times. It just is. But I was having a conversation with an acquaintance, we'll say. Not a friend. She's not really a friend, but an acquaintance. And she seemed to think that some of the things I talk about are antithetical to Christianity. And, my response to that is, this is folk Christianity. We are folk practitioners. Therefore, we're not practitioners of churchianity. We're practitioners of folk Christianity. And nowhere is that more evident, in my personal opinion, than when we're doing like Old Testament magic. And that's like using the Psalms and such with. So that was really kind of what sparked the conversation. And she had asked me, I see you're doing this Psalm as like a quote unquote curse on somebody. But does that really mean that you're just targeting that part of yourself and your psyche that needs to be worked on so you can then forgive that person? And I said, no, I'm not saying that at all. These Psalms were written to a different version of God. This is not the God of the Christians that we're talking about. This is Old Testament God. Old Testament God still was kind of hanging on to some of his personality aspects from when he was back in the Canaanite pantheon as the storm and war god. And you could read in those Psalms and even Genesis when Old Testament God was still kind of hanging around the other gods and had counsel with them and such. And so the Psalms were written to that version of God, to God as like storm god, war god, and trying to become the supreme powerful God. And so you can see that in the Psalms where David is writing like, you're the best God, you're the greatest, you're so good, and by the way, please strike these people down. There isn't any New Ageism in that. There's nothing in there about please help me develop my coping skills and let me learn to overcome those things that trigger me. That is not the kind of magic that we do. Hexameister and folk magic in general is not New Age, like fluffy stuff. It's just not. It's just not nice. And so when we're working with Old Testament stuff, we have to remember that this is a very different version of God. God evolved and eventually became like the nice, loving God, the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost. So maybe he just like calmed down in his old age, and now he's the God that is supposed to be all loving and accepting. Most of his followers don't see him that way, but here we are. So I think that's really important, that folk Christianity is not addressing God as the New Age like guru that's helping us to overcome stuff within ourselves. That's not the point of folk magic. That's not the point of folk Christianity. The point is to do what needs to be done to survive this harsh world that we live in by whatever means necessary. And the Psalms say that. They're very direct and very straightforward. There's no tiptoeing around it. There's no trying to find the New Age meaning in it and such. And even Christians are guilty of this too. They're trying to find, what's he really saying? What's the psychological reasoning behind it? No, it's, God, you're the best. Please don't strike me down, but please destroy my enemies. That's what the Psalms are about. So one that I really want to talk to you guys about as my fellow Hexameisters and my fellow folk magicians who aren't afraid to do the magic the way it's meant to be done, Psalm 109. Psalm 109 is basically the psalm used to literally ruin the life of your enemy and all of their descendants. It's very harsh. It's not something that we use often, but this is a really good one in my opinion. If you've met someone that has maybe like a generational curse on their family or on their property. Once you know either for sure who it is, or if you just want to send it, if you just want to work against whoever did this, Psalm 109 is a good one. And Psalm 109 doesn't have a rider built into it that they can undo this, but you can add that if you like, if you're feeling a little squeamish. But that was not the original intent. The original intent was like, hey God, you're awesome. By the way, destroy this enemy, destroy all of his descendants, make his line die out, and it is what it is. I mean, that's Old Testament magic. That's the Old Testament. That's the Bible. So anyway, you can do the psalm. Psalm magic is generally done by reading the psalm once through, and then reading like once through from start to finish, and then reading it through again, contemplating on each line, really thinking of the person you're working against or the situation you're trying for, taking into account like what do these lines mean, and not trying to find New Age symbolism in it, but really think about what's this going to do to the person, and then accepting that. And if you're okay with that, you complete that second time. And then if it's your preference to burn a candle while doing it, or have some sort of symbology or image of the individual that you're trying, like working against. If you don't know who it is, just have something to symbolize like this unknown enemy. That part's up to you. That's where folk magic becomes individualized and personalized. So when you're doing psalm magic, just know that the psalms are just what they are. They are what they are. They're maybe they have a lot of hidden esoteric meaning within them and things that we can decode and decipher and such. But I think the deeper we get into the psalms, the more we see that they come from a place when God was still fresh out of the Canaanite pantheon, and he was still the storm god and the war god, and he was trying to be put into a box where he was the loving God. But even like David and the writer of Psalms and the music and such, they knew he was not the loving God. They praised him as the loving God and then asked him to destroy people. It just is what it was. That's Old Testament God. And then at some point, with the development of Christianity, a guy named Jesus walking around spoke of God in a different aspect. And in my opinion, more of a nebulous aspect, because Jesus kind of made it seem like, well, just come through me, just go through me, and I'll relay your message to God. And so whether Jesus was actually the true Son of God, or whether he was a folk magician in his own right that just had a spiritual connection, it doesn't matter. Ultimately, it just means that we have to understand that our magic is not fluffy stuff. It's not to help people, overcome like negative self patterns and such. We're not psychologists. This isn't like psychological magic. It's not self-help, life coach magic. We're not those people. We are folk magicians, and this is folk Christianity, and it's meant to be used, and it's meant to overcome the very real things that we face in our lives. And there's just no tiptoeing around it. There's no being a baby about it. So while I think a certain amount of quote-unquote spirituality can be beneficial, really a lot of that is just like personal psychological work, because I don't think I don't think that whole idea of us progressing on this spiritual ladder and just becoming these beings of white light, I don't think that's a thing. I think we're meant to be humans, and that's why we're here, and then whatever comes after, that's what we'll do there. And then so yeah, I just have a very real different view on things. At one time I felt differently. Now I do not. And as I get older, I guess I get more jaded, and I guess I get more like understanding, like, wow, this stuff is really hardcore, and it's nasty, and it's That's what it's supposed to be. So that's my stance on that. But what I really want to talk about is Psalm 109. So Psalm 109 is designed to target that enemy, call down the wrath of Old Testament God, and say, that's it, I want their life ruined. I want their bloodline ruined and ended. It's hardcore. So if the individual, I would imagine it's not just for frivolous use, but if the individual doesn't deserve that, it's probably not going to happen to them. So anyway, that's the talk tonight, directed right at my Hexameisters and you folk magicians who aren't afraid to, be the two-headed doctor, because sometimes you got to do some ugly stuff. And that's what it's there for. So that's it. Hopefully that was interesting and helpful, and enlightening. And that's it. Wednesday night I'll have a special guest on. More to come on that. And then hopefully over the weekend I'll have my my Caribbean folk magic friend on. So yeah, some cool stuff coming down the line. But that's it for tonight. God bless you guys. Love you. We'll talk again really soon.